is the power of shared empathy, of shared other-centeredness in human organizations. And that play area was an organization in that time. But what it does is it pulls people to be thinking about other people. And it's powerful in making decisions and strategies and finding new markets. Because almost every entrepreneur, and Elon Musk recently said this, that when I stopped doing PayPal, created PayPal, I didn't think, how am I going to make more money? I thought about what meaningful world problem am I going to solve next? And that empathy, business, entrepreneurship, finding new markets, innovation, is built on human empathy, on being able to understand and see problems. And that's one of the powers of the other-centeredness of purpose, is that it activates emotion. And we make decisions based on emotion. Antonio Damasio, very famous psychologist, he did a study, and he had patients that had damage to the emotional center of their brain. And he had patients that didn't. And what he had them do is just try to make regular, everyday decisions. And what he found was that the people who had emotional damage to the emotional center of the brain, the limbic brain, were not able to make simple decisions. It took them twice as long to do so versus the people that had a healthy emotional center of the brain. And these were decisions that were very statistic-based, data-driven decisions in life, just simple things like budgets and all of that. And they couldn't make decisions about what to do. And what he came to realize was that while we may be thinking animals, we're feeling animals first that think. And feelings drive the decisions we make. And people are making constant decisions about your organization. They are deciding, should I stay here? Should I work here? Should I advance my career here? Customers are thinking, should I do business with you? Investors are thinking, should I invest? All of these people are making decisions. And essentially, your relationships with all of your stakeholders are just a series of human decisions. And humans' decisions are made on the basis of emotion. And purpose, because it is other-centered and it activates empathy, is rooted in emotion. So there may be no better strategy than to awaken and discover purpose in organizations for every stakeholder group, psychologically. And another thing, and Ricardo was talking about this difference between results and this sort of dualism, results and purpose. And it's important to understand how we've been thinking about human motivation for the last century. We think that people do things for just survival and to get things, results. But what happens is, psychologically, results push, right? So you can get the salary, you can get that commission from the sale, you can have a good financial quarter, but then what? What's after that? Then what happens? Well, you have to come up with a new goal, right, as an organization to motivate people. Okay, and then you get that, you reach that quota, you reach that goal, and then what? Well, let's get together and come up with more different incentives. It becomes very expensive pushing. And it's just the physics, a basic physics lesson. You know, when you get stuck on the side of the road, you don't call a push truck, right? You call a tow truck, because when you push something, you add weight to the object, and it's harder to push something. When you pull something, you lose that friction, and you can pull it. It's easier to pull. That's how purpose works psychologically. Purpose, because it's a reason for being that benefits other people, is almost unfinishable. It inspires a sense of striving versus driving. We can drive employees all day long with these perks, but they're just going to want to be driven again. But when we instill a belief in an other-centered purpose, which I'm going to give you examples of, we inspire a constant striving because it's never finished. And that is the critical difference and the big misconception about human motivation, is that results and things push people for the short term, but purpose pulls people for the long term. And I was recently working with some supply chain managers for a big Fortune 500 electronics company. And they ran a lot of distribution centers across North America. And now one thing that speakers like me know is that you all talk before you're coming into the room. And before this session, they were saying, oh, man, why do we have to be there? I hope he's not boring. I hope it's short. And all of this. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I hear you. So they were relatively not happy to be there. And they were all sitting around and kind of like you could tell they were ready to get out of that hotel ballroom. And I just asked them, I stopped the presentation, I said, hey, why do your jobs even exist? I mean, why do you do what you do? And everybody was kind of silent, looking at their phones. And then this one woman in the back, I'll never forget this, she raised her hand, she goes, I just realized why I've been doing this for 12 years. And she said that about a month and a half ago, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she was in an MRI machine. And she looked up at the MRI machine and the brand, and she said, we distribute the widget that goes into this machine. And she goes, I realized that my job existed all this time to save my own life. And she says this, you want an antidote to employee disengagement? That whole room, some of you all may be feeling it now just with the story, that whole room changed. All of a sudden, people started talking about, like, well, how do we communicate this with the frontline people who used to be just a turnover statistic, which was why I was brought in. Turnover's high, fix it. We're losing employees to the competitors, fix it. It was right under their nose the whole time. Their jobs existed to distribute widgets into medical devices that literally saved people's lives. There was no other way around it. Some people in here and some people in here after at the speaker's lounge may say, well, this is one perspective. What is the alternative to the perspective? That's literally why the product exists. So we can make the decision to bring that narrative of the human being, that the product, whatever it is, the service, help serve and make their lives better, to the forefront of the narrative of the whole organization to enable and inspire and compel people